Hey there, and welcome. So, we're living in a world that is just flooded with information, right? Everywhere you look, there's data. But how do you find the real story, the signal in all that noise? Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle today. We're diving into the fundamentals of statistics, the powerful science of, well, making sense of it all.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? How do you take all that raw information and turn it into something meaningful? Something you can actually use? It doesn't matter if you're in business or science or you're just trying to figure out what's going on in the news. We are constantly swimming in data. And the answer, the key to turning it into actual knowledge? You guessed it. It's statistics. So let's get into it.
All right, first up, statistics, past and present. To really get what statistics is all about today, I think it helps to look back at where it even came from. And trust me, you might be surprised to hear its roots go way, way back, like thousands of years back. So check this out. The basic idea of collecting data to understand a population, it's not new at all. We're talking ancient stuff. Around 300 BC in India, you had Kautilya's Arthashastra, which was already recording things like births and deaths. Fast forward to the 1500s, and you have Abu Fazl's Ain Akbari with super detailed agricultural records. See the pattern? Rulers have always needed to know what's going on. But the term we use, statistics, that came much later, in 1749, when a guy named Gottfried Achenwall, often called the father of statistics, really formalized it all. And even the word statistics tells you its origin story. If you look at where it comes from, the Latin word status, the Italian statista, the German statistic, they all have to do with the state, political affairs. It makes perfect sense, right? Statistics was literally born from the practical need to run a country. So what exactly is statistics? This is kind of interesting because the word actually has two different meanings. On one hand, in the singular sense, statistics is a science. It's the method, the process, the toolkit you use for collecting and analyzing data. But on the other end, in the plural sense, statistics just means the data itself, the numbers, the facts. I love this analogy. Think of it like cooking. The data is your ingredients, and the science of statistics is the recipe. You absolutely need both to make something insightful. Okay, next up, the hunt for data. So we've established that statistics is both the recipe and the ingredients, which leads to a pretty obvious question, right? Where do we get those ingredients? Where does the data actually come from? At the most basic level, you can think of data as coming in two main flavors. First, you've got your quantitative data. Think quantity. It's all about numbers, things you can count or measure, like your age, your income, or the number of accidents on a road. Then you've got qualitative data. Think quality or category. These are things you observe but can't really measure with a number, like someone's nationality or the color of a flower. And just to be clear, both types are super valuable. Now, let's talk about where we find this data. Sometimes you have to go out and get it yourself. When you do that, it's called primary data. This is brand new, fresh off the presses information that you've collected for the very first time for your specific project. You're the one getting it straight from the source. So how do you actually do that? Well, there are a few classic ways. You can do direct interviews, either in person or on the phone. That's great for getting detailed answers. Or you could send out a questionnaire through the mail. This can reach a lot of people, but you know how it is. The response rates can be pretty low. Another way is just direct observation. Literally just watching and recording what you see or taking measurements, like height and weight. But let's be real, you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And that's where secondary data comes in. This is basically information that someone else has already collected. They did all the hard work, and using it can save you a ton of time and, let's be honest, a ton of money. And these treasure troves of data are literally everywhere once you know where to look. We're talking about huge international organizations like the World Health Organization or the IMF. Government sources are another big one. Think census data. Then you have private research groups and universities. And of course, there's the internet, which is just a massive, massive source of secondary data. All right, this is where it gets really fun. Let's talk about making data speak. We've got our history, we've got our raw materials, but a pile of numbers doesn't really mean anything to anyone. So the question is, how do we transform that silent spreadsheet into a story that people can actually understand and connect with? Generally speaking, there are three main ways to present your data. You can just write it out in text, you can organize it neatly into a table, or you can get visual and create a diagram. Each one has its place, and they all have their pros and cons. So, first up is the textual presentation. This is exactly what it sounds like. You just describe the data in a paragraph. Yeah, it's simple. but let's be real, it can be incredibly dull to read. And more importantly, once you have more than just a handful of numbers, it becomes pretty much useless. It's just too hard to see what's going on.
Okay, so for anything more complex, tables are your best friend. This is a much, much better way to organize information. A good table has a clear structure with rows and columns, and every single part has a job to do. You've got the title up top that tells you what you're even looking at. The stub on the left tells you what each row is about. The box head across the top labels the columns, and then, right in the middle, the body has all your juicy numbers. It's organized, it's precise, and it makes comparing things a breeze. But if you really want to make an impact, if you want to grab someone's attention instantly, you use a diagram. Let me just show you. Imagine I told you that in a survey, 10 people preferred text, 65 preferred tables, and 90 preferred diagrams. Okay, you get it. But what if I show you this bar chart? Bam! You don't even have to think. You just see the result. The insight is immediate, it's powerful. And that's the whole point of diagrams. They are incredibly attractive and engaging. They can help you spot trends that might be totally hidden in a giant table. And maybe best of all, pretty much everyone can understand a good chart. The goal here isn't just to show the data. It's to guide someone's eye to the most important takeaway in like 3 seconds flat. Now, there is a trade-off. They are less precise. You lose some of that detailed accuracy you get from a table, but you gain that instant aha moment.
Last but not least, the rules of the game. So we've seen how powerful this stuff can be. But you know what they say, with great power comes great responsibility. So before we wrap up, we absolutely have to talk about the limitations, the rules you have to play by if you're going to use statistics correctly.
So here are a few really important things to keep in your back pocket. First, statistics deals with averages and groups, aggregates, not single individuals. It can't tell you about one specific person. Second, it's a numbers game. So if you have qualitative data, you've got to find a way to turn it into numbers before you can do much with it. And probably the most important one, your conclusions are only ever as good as your data. If your sample is biased or not random, your results are, well, they're garbage. Simple as that. This quote here really just nails it. Intelligence, patience, and experience are required for scrutinizing the data. Because that's the bottom line. Statistics isn't some magic wand you wave to get the truth. It's a tool. And like any powerful tool, it takes skill to use it right. You need the intelligence to ask good questions, the patience to double-check everything, and the experience to know what the results are really telling you.
So there you have it. We've gone from ancient record keeping all the way to modern data visualization. And I hope the biggest takeaway is this. Data doesn't just exist on its own. It has to be collected, organized, and presented thoughtfully. Because in the end, that's what statistics is all about. It's a tool for storytelling. And that leaves us with one final big question for you to think about. Data tells a story. What story will you choose to tell?